for your time and support. Okay, with that out of the way, let's introduce our first panelist and dive right into the first segment on essential clues and bonus detail. What's the difference? We'll find out in a moment here. So, in the driver's seat today, because I switched them right the last second, we have Daniel. Who are you? What content do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
I am Daniel from Driving and Dragons. I have a YouTube channel here. Me and a bunch of other TTRPG guys got together and wrote a pulp called Corvid Codex, the first volume of which is already out and up for sale on Lulu. And you can find the links on my X page or Facebook or anything out there. Today, the only actually threw the link up to Max is good old Eclectic Goat, who's a great indie game supporter and a fantastic channel. She's got some serious health stuff going on. So I shared with Max the link for her Ko-Fi so that you can throw a couple bucks her way to help out with the upcoming medical bills and whatnot. As far as experience, I started with Cyberpunk back in the late 90s and moved into D&D 3.5. I've since gone around and found out that I should never leave 3.5 for D&D because it's objectively the best. But really, why would I play D&D when I can play Cyberpunk or Call of Cthulhu or any of the other games that are much better than D&D? So that's where I'm at, and I'm making my own game based on the D30.
All right. So let's jump right into our first question. And then is, how do you, Daniel, how do you define an essential clue versus bonus detail? And how do you keep the mystery solvable without making the solutions feel obvious?
Well, there's kind of a trick to it. One thing you have to remember is your players are idiots. That's what you have to understand. You have to understand that your players are all morons. Doesn't matter if your table has like Hawking and Einstein at it; they're all dummies. The reason I say that, it's not because your players are actually unintelligent individuals. It's that when you're putting together a mystery, you have to remember that you are playing with perfect information. And you always are as the game master. The game master is the only person at the table who ever has perfect information. You know what every NPC is thinking. You know what every NPC is doing. You know what all their goals are. And then before any rolls or anything happens, the players tell you what they're doing and what their goals are. So you're the only one operating with a full deck. Same thing happens in these mysteries. When you're putting these clues together, of course it seems obvious to you because you already know the answer. They don't. So the kind of a basic rule of thumb is if you think it's too simple, it's probably not. That's probably about where you need to be. If you think you've got a really good clue, you're probably about to stump your players and watch them stare around asking you if there's some kind of roll they can make or something for the next 4 hours. Because it's crafty and clever to you because you already know the answer. And crafty and clever to somebody who already knows the answer is impossible to somebody who has no clue what's going on. Plus, we have to remember that in these games, the player only gets the feedback that comes in from you. So unless you're playing some kind of game where you're allowed to walk in and just say, well, you didn't say there's not a clue on the desk, so there's a clue on the desk and I pick up the clue, then they don't even know, they don't have all the sensory information. Like they don't have the smells and the sounds. They don't notice that little scratch on the wall that wasn't there beforehand. So they don't have all these little context clues that they can piece together on their own. You have to give them to them in order for them to actually figure the puzzle out. And when you start talking about the concept of what's an essential clue versus what is an extra clue or a bonus clue, I don't think that's the right way to approach it at all. You should never approach these things from the concept of the clue. You approach it from the concept of the answer. This is the information that is absolutely necessary for them to be able to solve the puzzle. What can I make that points to it? This is information that makes it considerably easier to find those things. And what can I do that points to them? Those are your clues. So you're going into a room, you need to know that the person was in this room. Or like, actually, I'll use one that I've used before. You need to understand that this was a locked room. There was no way obviously for somebody to have come in or out for this murder. This person was killed when he was alone in the room. Now, the important thing that they need to know is that the reason that happened is the sniper was on a building across the road and used a dimension door spell through the window to teleport the bolt in right behind the guy's head. That's how he was able to shoot the guy with a crossbow bolt when he was nowhere near the room at all. So what can I point towards this? Well, one, I need to make sure that we know that the doors were all locked from the inside. The window is locked from the inside. Maybe there's a magical aura there. I need to put together pieces that point towards there's no boot scuffs, there's no marks on the windowsill, there's no broken glass, there's nothing that says anything other than this projectile appeared in this room. And then I start putting my clues together from there. The obvious clue, as long as they look, I'm going to give it to them. The quote unquote extra clues are going to want to start giving them more and more if they do more and more. Hey, I'm going to cast Detect Magic. All right, cool. You cast Detect Magic. I'm going to go ahead and give you what you get from that. It's like, hey, there is a faint aura left over of abjuration, or of in an abjuration that does teleportation. I forgot which.
I don't know off the top of my head.
There's a faint aura of teleportation magic. I don't care if the rule book tells me that if they don't detect this spell within this many hours to figure this out, that it's going to fade. I'm not giving them that crap. They can come back 5 days later because they had an epiphany and run back in there and say, I'm going to run back in and cast a spell and see if I find any magical languorings. I'm going to give them that in order for them to get that clue, because I want to reward them for thinking through the puzzle. I'm not trying to punish them with game rules. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. All right, you guys want to piggyback on there? You want me to hit them with a follow-up?
Oh no, I just want to add, like, I actually don't think it's a bad distinction that you provided, essential clue versus bonus detail. In fact, when you sent us those, like, the questions, I'd never actually had thought about it like that. And I think I sort of do the whole bonus detail thing reflexively, like unconsciously. But I don't treat these bonus details as necessarily clues, more like something to just sort of add to the ambiance and tone of the adventure. In the OSR context, I mean, when we're talking about mysteries, you're usually talking about a trap you've discovered or about to stumble into, like when you're dungeon crawling, right? So you telegraph it by dropping a clue, and then the players start poking around to see if they can figure out, like, okay, what's going to happen if we're not careful, kind of thing. And then, like, the bonus detail would be something just to sort of, like, impress upon them how dangerous it is or something. Like, the example I have here actually is not an OSR thing, because I'm actually working on something for the Red Room that does in fact involve, like, a mystery and investigation. But the example would be, you find a witness to a horrific event of some kind, like a murder or something, and the witness provides a clue as to who the perpetrator might be, provide height, weight, clothing, that sort of thing. And then the bonus detail might be something that can, like, telegraph or hint at something down the road, but it's really just kind of like help setting the tone. And the bonus detail would be, he was 6 foot tall with a black trench coat, he was making some sort of weird clicking noise. Clicking noise isn't going to really tell you anything directly right away, but the height, weight, clothing, I mean, especially if you're, in a modern setting, you'll be able to, that should lead to more clues and provide the players with some sort of, like, direction to go. Hey, let's check out some surveillance videos. That sort of thing. But yeah, I actually like that distinction, the bonus detail. My only caution would be is don't provide too much, because I think that could distract players. Just something like just a little snippet. And then Game Master should be doing that regardless of whether it's a mystery or anything. I mean, the bonus detail, as I defined it, is just good RP, but that's all I have to really say about that distinction.
Well, I want since you mentioned the questions earlier, I actually had a third one in there that I removed, which is about red herrings. But the bonus detail can go, and the reason it's so vague like that is it can go a couple different ways. It could be a bonus detail, as in an example I might do would be like, oh, you got extra successes or you rolled really, really well. Let me give you some more detail to elaborate. Like, let's use Daniel's example for a moment. Was it just magic? This was definitely a type of short distance teleportation magic. Now, it still leaves a couple open. It could be blink. It could be a dimension door. It could be, hell, it could have been a portable hole or something. Who knows? But it's a little bit more on there. The other way it could be is kind of like maybe how you were mentioning it, is just extra detail to add color to the situation that I would be nervous about, because I know that when I say stuff as the game master, players take that as gold. Even if you just want it to be color, they're like, he said there was clicking noises and 6 foot tall. That means something. What can only be 6 feet? Anything around here 6 feet? Like they start overreacting to some of that.
I think it should be both, to be honest.
Sure.
Like, you can be both ambiance and additional. It kind of plays into both of those things. So, like, going back to the exact same example there, if you look for it at all, you're going to find that there's magic there. I'm not going to hide that from you. And even if they don't say have a detect magic ability, if they give me some logical way they're looking for it, if I have to create it on the spot, I'm going to give them some evidence that magic was, whether it's an NPC who leans over and says, hey, go grab, wise man Jim or whatever to come in here and cast detect magic for them because they don't have it. I'm going to, if they have the thought process, I'm going to give them that. Any roll is just going to be how detailed does it get? Is it, oh, well, it was magic. It was teleportation magic. Oh, it was short range teleportation magic. So now they know it is. Hey, this was the type of spell we can't really tell, but it had to be something that they could see. So now they know it has to be line of sight. So they're looking at that window. How can I see in here? All based on how good the roll is. So the roll doesn't become success or failure. It becomes how much extra how much closer to the truth is your piece of information. Red herrings, I think there's a rule for red herrings. They have to be brutally obvious to you as the game master. The reason is because the players are going to invent enough of their own red herrings by themselves, by dint of all that information you can't put in their head, all that environment that they naturally invent in their vision. They're going to come up with their own stuff that drives them off the rails.
Where do you think the best place to get red herrings are? You listen to their conversation, go, oh, yes, we can have some fun with that.
Yeah. Now, but if you say, like, he makes a clicking noise, that should never just be atmosphere. If he makes a clicking noise, you need to be fully prepared as a game master to put the clicking noise somewhere else they can find it so that they can link the pieces together. Otherwise, you've just robbed them of their additional success because all you gave them was something that makes the game a little more fun. It doesn't actually help their character at all.
Oh, that's fair. No, you're right. And I actually do agree with you on that. The clicking noise actually was, I cannot remember the name of the movie, but it's from the 90s. It was about these cockroaches that like advanced evolutionarily speaking, like really fast to the point where they were like tall as a human. And I think if I remember correctly, they made little clicking noises before they like flew at you. But in the darkness, they looked like they were just dudes wearing trench coats. So that's what I was thinking about. So that clicking noise, kind of spooky. It might become relevant later on, especially when they're like walking around and they see some dude looking like in a trench coat making a clicking sound. But it's one of those bonus details that I think, especially if you're running like a contemporary horror, I think that would, help. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like what the example I was kind of running with. I cannot remember the name of that movie. I really liked it though. But yeah, I actually agree with you too. This is not the place to be adversarial. Mimic, thank you. Yeah, this is not the place to be adversarial as a game master. In fact, I think kind of going along with what Daniel's saying here. I have it in my little notes. Can you see me? Okay. I have it a little bit more I guess diplomatically about your players' ability to understand what's going on. Some are going to be better at investigative stuff than others. And if you are going to use red herrings, and I think you should, because that's just kind of realistic. especially if you have a smart bad guy, big bad, who's trying to cover up his or her tracks. I think you should use red herrings, but this is the least adversarial you should be as a game master. I completely agree with Dan here. If they have an idea but they don't have the ability to actually, do the thing like the detect magic spell, by all means have the local mages guild be called to do it, so that way they can sort of advance the story, advance the mystery, and get on to the next thing. I have noted in my notes here, inverted pyramid. Your opening clues should be broad and general enough and kind of easy to find, and hopefully that'll like generate additional questions about it. So like, oh, it's an abjuration. Well, what's abjuration? Oh, there's a lot of teleportation stuff. Oh, can we figure out what kind of teleportation magic this is? And then that kind of narrows it down until they finally get, oh, it was a blink spell, it's got to be used line of sight. Oh, well, there's that convenient, rooftop veranda over there with all the bushes. Maybe someone was hiding, and then boom, they're on to the next clue. They go over and check out the bushes and maybe find some tracks or something, that kind of thing.
Very good. If I can chime in at this point, teleportation is alteration in first and second, or conjuration in 3.5. And
that's right.
Fifth.
I'll hand in my nerd card.
No. I had to look it up. I wasn't too sure either. But just to clear that, a 6 foot tall clicking thing, I'd have my players searching the monster manual and going after any 3 cream they could find in the city. Because a detail like that, unless it's quite relevant or leads to something, will get the players kind of going down an alley that is, and I've had this a few times, and not off the cuff, but something colorful. And then before you know it, the players have spent half the session chasing it down and trying to figure out whether it has anything to do with the adventure or not. And even when they get to it's definitely got nothing. But what if that's the point? What if it actually has? Because it's got nothing and we can't see it, it must have something. And your players. Daniel, completely agree with what you said. I think it's always been my approach. Come up with how something is done, and then work back from there. And then you've got all the information you need. If your players come up with something bright, something you didn't consider, you've got all the answers. You just give them give them what they've discovered at that point. I don't do a lot of sort of mystery investigative stuff, but it has its moments within my campaigns. And when I do, I start with, how is this done? What is the mystery? What are they investigating? How is it originally done? Where are the points that the players can pick up clues? Are those clues important? Where are the points that the players can actually fail? And I know we come on to that in a bit. But does failure mean the end of the investigation? If it means the end of the investigation, where do they go from there? But I do agree, coming up with the reason why or how it's done, and then filling in the background of that. So I don't think I can really add anything more to this, because I think between Lord Mateus and Dan, everything's been said. This is a great way of building that initial investigation, having lots of areas that the players can explore, that then begin to narrow down their areas of investigation until eventually, hopefully, they narrow in on what happened, and go from there. The one thing I'd say, though, is doing investigations in something like AD&D 5th edition especially, divination spells are the biggest bane. You go walk into the room, the guy's dead, speak with dead. How do you handle that?
I disagree on 2 points you made. First, that you don't add to it, and second, that there's nothing more to say. One, because you brought up something, you kind of touched on the edges of it. One point that I think here that a lot of people miss, and I think that a lot of people don't think of, and to be fair and to be honest, I didn't consciously think of it for this discussion until you kind of touched on the edges of it. Failure needs to be failure. Same thing with a red herring. When I say it needs to be obvious, when they run it down, they need to hit a wall that says we're on the wrong track, or you will have 10 sessions of them digging in the wrong hole. If there's any thread that they might be right, they're going to keep chasing the rabbit. They need to go off there and like Lord Mateus said, you got the inverted triangle that kind of goes from the broad down into the pit of the answer. The second you get outside the triangle lines, those players need to run into something that says, hey, we're on the wrong track.
Yeah.
So that they know to go back and look and reassess. Otherwise, they're going to be there off track forever. Once again, because they don't have all this additional information that we just, unless we're going to just pull the book off the shelf and read them a novel, they're not going to get the information.
Yeah.
So
That's as long as the players take that as being read. And I've had players where I've had to literally stop the game after several hours have been wasted and go, look, guys, this is not the right track. And even then they're like, oh, is the DM telling us that just to throw us off the right track?
I was just going to hit on that because I've run into that a lot myself. I've done it myself where it's like, I don't trust you because I know what you've done in the past and you're just trying to throw us off. So that actually means that we're on the right path. But now we think we're on the right path, we're probably on the wrong path. But but I know once again that because I think we're on the right path, which is actually the wrong path, it's actually the right path. I know that might sound silly, and it probably does to most people, but I've literally sat at tables where stuff like that happened.
Great point. Great way to sum that up is your players are stupid.
Or the game master's been unnecessarily adversarial to the point where
I'm talking about being super obvious and you keep hitting them in the face with it and they keep going off. Like you have to be very obvious and very clear in game about it. But the other thing you touched on, and I was already leaning that direction, you started leading into it, then you said it explicitly when you're talking about divination spells and stuff. Anytime you do a mystery type adventure, you absolutely must 100,000% not only consider your players' abilities, but also the general abilities of the world at large. A mystery in Faerun is not going to be the same as a mystery in Greyhawk, and is certainly not going to be the same as a mystery in 1920s America.
That's true.
Because in 1920s America, I still believe in eugenics, and I barely passed the point where I'm balancing humors as a doctor, and I'm driving around in a Model, and I'm not in a Model T in the 20s. I'm in something a little better than that. I'm driving around in a car that's just one step beyond me cranking it with my hand. In Greyhawk, I've got some abilities. I've got some magic. And in Faerun, the second level guy who's 2 doors over can cast a spell that lets him talk to the guy that got killed. So I need to make sure that when they do speak with dead, the dead goes, gee, I sure wish I could tell you, but he shot me in the back of the head. All I know is that I was wiping my butt on the latrine and all of a sudden stars flashed everywhere and I was in hell.
That's a good point. But you know what? I don't see the whole divination magic necessarily as like an unfair advantage to a player. Like players should be allowed to use their abilities to solve whatever a problem, obstacle, monster, whatever. And if they have divination, let them use it, though I do think from the game master's perspective,
if you're using it though, real quick, I think the point was if you're using it, how do you prevent that from just solving everything adventure over? I think that was the point.
That's exactly the point. I'm giving a very broad, obvious example, but like if you pull up the guy in mind who was doing Speak with Dead, and you said, hey, I'm going to speak with dead with the guy that got shot, he might be able to tell you some people that he'd recently had an argument with. He's going to be able to tell you about his political rival that he, was just about to close the book on and put out everything. And he'll even tell you stuff like, I walked in and I locked the window shut and I turned the key in the door and I put it down and I sat down because I was about to have a private conversation via crystal ball with this guy over here and let him know everything was happening. So he's telling you the doors were locked, the windows were locked. There was nobody in here.
Right.
I used my divination scrying deflection field so nobody could listen in. And here's some people who had problems with me. But it wasn't going to be, I walked over to the window and looked out and saw the flash of light, and there's the guy with the crossbow on the roof who shot that.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with this. Like, I don't see it as a problem. I just see it as
you just have to consider if it's a problem when you're developing your mystery.
I was basically going in. I don't see it as a problem. It's just something that needs to be considered. And I think players need to be rewarded for being able to, they've spent the time. They've spent the time to get to whatever level to have those abilities, let them use it. And I actually hate, Well, like, yeah, I'll use Grimtooth traps. Like, you know, those are fun to read, but there's so many really cheap, terrible
you.
traps in there. Like, oh, there's going to be an invisible wall here, just so the trap works, kind of thing. And I sort of feel like if you're going to find, unless there's a specific reason for it, going back to like the clicking noise guy, unless there's a specific reason for why like a divination wouldn't work, you know, you shouldn't come up with some reason why the divination doesn't work. And if anything, the fact that the divination doesn't work itself could be a clue. Like, oh, it's a completely locked room. The guy got hit with a crossbow bolt. The window's not broken, and my divination magic's not working. Whoa, something really supernatural is happening here. You know, that's that kind of thing. So, anyway,
Yep. And well, heck, I mean, like I said, if you get caught with your pants down because you didn't consider something and your player comes up with an ability, then the next thing is for you to consider some way that their ability still works and gives them a benefit, but doesn't completely unravel the adventure for everybody because you goofed up. So how do you change that? All right. And that's where being able to think on your feet and ad lib as a DM comes into play. If you can't do it, 100%. You got a problem and you have to give it to them. And then it's like, okay, that was a real short adventure. Well, you know, this village also has a problem with bandits.
Right. Well, you know, and oh, go ahead, Dean.
I was about to say it's also understanding the abilities of the assassin and whoever hired the assassin as well. In a magical world, if you're going after a high-profile person and the person who's initiating the assassination is powerful enough themselves, they will understand what divinations can do. They will take measures themselves to prevent certain divinations from working. A non-detection on the assassin alone would probably pay dividends, because whilst you're right, you can do a speak with dead, you can get that information back, which I think is fantastic. You then start to expand your divinations to more powerful things. You're not going to get anything back.
Or alter self.
Absolutely, alter self. So you now get that red herring. That is actually it's a red herring, but it's also a big clue as to. I got to be honest. When I plan an investigative part of a story, I love the planning part, because you get to do this sort of mental mind walking through all the different scenarios, all the different options, all the different things the players could do, and then go, my bad guy would know. So how would he counter? How would he stop this working? But where would he also make mistakes? Where would the clues be left? How would that bread trail lead back to the assassin, and therefore back to whoever was behind that assassin? And you're
also,
right.
Don't forget that non-detection in and of itself is a clue.
Yeah,
who can cast it? Where'd that come from? You know,
absolutely.
What rumors abound? You know, with that.
Yeah, and it all depends. It all depends on the game world, what you've got within that world. If the spell non-detection isn't really a usable thing, but there are rare items, instantly your party now know we're looking for one of these rings of non-detection. There are only 3 in the world, so one must have been purchased or used. We'll investigate that lead instead, because if we find out where that was or who's got it, we're one step closer. So yeah, I do love coming up with the rhyme, the reason, and then leaving that kind of bread trail where the mistakes were made to lead back to who did it.
I want to step this a little forward. Oh no, go ahead if you had more.
No, it's okay.
I want to step this just a little bit forward here, because you know I like to think of this as some sort of advice show for people who might want to learn something from it. So how, starting with you, Daniel, because it's still your segment here, how do you balance meaningful clues or real clues with the red herrings and the bonus information?
Well, for one, I always go back to what I said before. Your players are stupid. They're stupid in the fact that they, like I said, they don't have this wealth of information that they wouldn't even naturally have as people in the situation. So red herrings are always painfully obvious. Broad clues are always, to me, painfully obvious. And extra is always about giving another detail. That's what extra is. It's always another detail that helps narrow the focus. So if I know, for instance, that the logical place, and this is the logical conclusion. I'm thinking about this as a logical individual who gets this set of information. If I know that the logical place to proceed is to go search the warehouse or search the alleyway across from the window, search the building across from the window, right? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start piecing together details about those buildings across the way that might help them. So the extra clue may not be, hey, this is the hour. Like the extra clue may not be something super specific that says go look in the warehouse. The extra clue may be something like, well, the warehouse was closed last weekend. So, hey, it was shut down, or the bakery recently went out of business. So that building's actually empty, which means that it's probably a good idea to go look in it. That's a great place for an assassin to go, the empty bakery that's no longer open. So that's really, when you balance it, it's all about balancing how much detail it gives. And as far as red herrings go, for one, I don't think you should be doing more than one. I really don't. If you're doing more than maybe two, if you're doing a whole bunch of red herrings, first off, you have just turned your players into that. When you give them something obvious, they're like, yeah, right. Because last time you gave us something obvious, we went scooping out the porta potties to find something that wasn't there. All right. So red herrings, you got to be careful with, because the players, not the characters, the players have to trust the GM. Otherwise, they won't trust any clues. And if they don't trust any clues, they'll never figure it out. So you got to be very, very careful with your red herrings, and you can't do it too often. You can't push that button too many times. I would also say a big thing to balance a red herring, even if you give them a true blue red herring that leads to an obvious dead end, there needs to be some light at the end of that tunnel. There needs to be something there that points back in the right direction, that lets them know, hey, there's nothing here, but you know what? By accident, we found this thing that actually does help us. So for instance, oh, here's a dead end. It's a bad red herring. We went to this crazy warehouse over here. He wasn't there. But you know what I did find there? This oddball crossbow that has this little strip of wood that hangs off the front and has a big ring. Why is that? Well, when we start looking at this ring creates dimension door. So in other words, anytime I fire this crossbow, it opens up a teleportation to something that's in line of sight within a certain number of feet. What's within 120 feet of the window where the guy got shot? Now I found the rooftop, even from the red herring, just because the bad guy happened to throw his crossbow into that warehouse.
Is that a red herring though? If they went to the wrong warehouse and then you dropped a major clue there, I mean, is that more like Quantum Ogre?
No. Now, well, one thing I'm doing there is I am giving a very blatant and obvious.
Yeah.
I don't think I would do something that blatant.
Else we'd have to run through a 4-hour session to get to the. I get what you're doing.
I'd have to give you like a 40-page dissertation of the type of clue. So I'm being a little.
I get it. No, I get it. But like, I think like a good red herring that is obvious is like the alter self, right? Let's say you do cast the spell and the speak with dead, and the guy's like, yeah, I saw John the Butcher. He was the one with the crossbow, right? And then you go to arrest John the Butcher. He's like, I was in the visiting my family the night of the murder or whatever, right? So that's kind of a red herring, right? They went on this thing, and because of this criminal mastermind who's using magic appropriately, right? And that's an obvious dead end, because now they have like, yeah, I was with my family in the next town over, and then you confirm it with all these other people. It's like, yeah, this was a dead end. We got bamboozled by somebody. And then again, that's sort of by I can't think of the name. The word is escaping me, but it's another in and of itself a clue. Like you're dealing with someone who knows how to use magic, and
I would even call
it tricked us.
I would even call in that instance for a roll. Now, what I might do is say, hey, give me an intelligence check. And if somebody is reasonably close to what I think the DC should be, I'd ask, do you have knowledge arcana or something of that nature? Oh, yes, this. It's like, okay, well, cool. The thought pops into your head that, hey, if the butcher was out of town and we let off on this, somebody disguised themselves as a butcher and fooled this magic. Who has that ability? And then that puts them back on the path of narrowing down the list of people in town who have the ability to look like the butcher.
Oh, sure. But I think even in using that example, I don't know if you'd need to leave it to a roll. I guess that would really depend on how bad your players are, I suppose. Because that
actually leads into my next follow-up question, Lord Mattias. But I want to give Dean a chance to go because you're jumping right into the last thing I want to ask here. So if you can hold on to that for just a second. You have anything to add to that, Dean? Or
yeah, I was just thinking. So with the red herring, I think it ties in with what you're saying here, which is if you've laid a red herring. So you kind of the red herring's the neighboring warehouse. It's got nothing to do with it. However, they do find a potion bottle there. This is like a bonus clue. The potion bottle's empty. They pick it up. They do a little bit of testing. Someone takes a bit of the liquid and they begin to change their form. And then it changes back because it's only a little bit of liquid. But they now realize the potion bottle is Alter Self. So the red herring took them somewhere else, but put them in a bonus clue, which is an alteration magic could have potentially been used. They still don't know the potion bottle's got anything to do with what's happened. But now they go and talk to the butcher, find out the butcher's out of town. They're now beginning to piece the thing together. And now they've got, okay, so this was thrown into the warehouse. Let's look back at that area, but let's look wider. Because that red herring taking us to the area still had a clue. But that clue was a bonus clue, and it now brings us back to the area to look for the proper clue to try and find exactly where the assassin was.
I don't think I would use a bonus clue. Maybe I'm the asshole. I don't know.
Well, what you're saying here is that we look at what is the red herring. So you can say, is this a true red herring that's entirely meant to lead to a true dead end? And you can do that. And like I said, it has to be painfully obvious that that's what it is. Yeah. So that they get back on track and you're not there for 6 sessions poking around the warehouse. But the other way to put that out is the red herring is not an intentional red herring where we're actually trying to mislead the players. A red herring is a default fail state for the players went in, did their stuff, maybe failed their rolls and stuff, and the information led them astray, led them down the red herring and wasted their time, but in their resources, but gave them a point back the other way. So the default failed state is instead of going from A to B, you go from A to A.5 to B. And you could even do that. You can branch that out as much as you want to and have A.5, and then like way over here, you have, 1.757, which has nothing to do with letters and has to get you back to B. But that's because they failed absolutely everything, and they went, once again, digging in the latrine for clues on the other side of town at the fair.
Right. But I'm going back to from an intentional red herring perspective, the criminal mastermind trying to throw the party off. There has to be a consequence for them getting duped, in my opinion, right? So like maybe the criminal mastermind is now like one step ahead, maybe a couple steps ahead, maybe he's already left town, kind of thing. And I think I can certainly agree and sympathize with the inadvertent red herring because the players just, for whatever reason, they decided to go do this thing that has nothing to do with the mystery, but they think it does. Yeah, but I guess maybe a little quantum ogre magic. Be like, oh, hey, here's this potion that kind of puts you back on the right track, or an oddly shaped crossbow bolt with like runes etched on it, or whatever. That I can kind of get. But when I use red herrings, they're intentional usually, and there's a consequence for getting duped. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. Maybe, and again, I'm not trying to be adversarial from a referee standpoint, but from a story, put on my story hat,
you gave the killer another moment to commit another murder.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in one way here, especially if it's an intentional red herring. That can very easily be Well, I also happened to put the scrying spell inside the latrine, which let's not let that go too far off to the side. But at the fair, I put the scrying spell in the latrine, so I know you guys ran off to do that. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to scrub all the locations I was at, and now the best clues that you can find are actually the second best clues I had planned, because the bad guy knows that you guys are looking, knows that you're on the trail, knows that he distracted you, and he takes the extra effort to go make it harder when you do get back on. That's perfectly reasonable and adds a wrinkle, but it's not a situation where it's like no penalty. It's just you need to make sure that they have a clear avenue to get back on track so they don't go 6 towns over and you're now inventing taverns and shit.
Yeah. All right, let me. Go ahead, Dean.
Sorry. Yeah, I've done deliberate red herrings as well, where the mastermind behind this sets a false trail. And I think this is Lord Mateus, what you were kind of talking about, which is they've set a trail. They don't know who's going to investigate this, but they know someone's going to investigate. And likelihood is it'll be a group of adventurers if it's a fantasy setting, or specialists because of the nature of what happened. So they set this kind of obvious trail, incredibly obvious, probably should be having the players going, yeah, this is incredibly obvious. This is like dead easy. Is this? And at the end of it, there's an ambush. There's thugs. There's whatever. There's a big trap, or there is, because the bad guy, he wants to get rid of these investigators. He doesn't want them snooping around. So get them the other side of town and then job them. Get rid of them. And then if that fails, which the likelihood the party will succeed, they've now got a wealth of new clues. They've got the people they've killed, if it happens to be thugs. They've got this mechanical trap or whatever. Whatever was put there to defeat them is a clue itself as to who's behind this, and now begins to open up a whole new set of routes to solving the mystery. They can return back and see if they can follow the original path, or they've now got a new path. And instantly, they've now got more options, more ways of tackling the investigation.
All right, well, we need to jump into the next segment here real quickly, but I want to do one follow-up because I cut Lord Mattias off earlier when he was starting to kind of dive into this here. Daniel, I'm gonna have you hold for just a moment here, because even though it's segment 1, I want to start with Lord Mattias on this. Also, you already kind of answered this, but we'll come back to you, for you to verify your answer. Lord Mattias, should essential clues ever require a successful roll, or should rolls only be for how much extra detail players receive?
Oh, that is a good question. It's something that I do struggle. I shouldn't say struggle with, but it's something that I, broadly speaking, with game design, I struggle with. Like, I don't know how much I want to leave to a roll. I think leaving things to, if finding the clue requires a roll, I think it better be an easy one so the players can find it, I guess. But I would avoid that 100%, because the moment you call for a roll, you're committing to the outcome. And this is true for any investigation, combat, social encounter. You are committing yourself to the outcome, unless you're going to start fudging dice. Which we all know that argument, right? Like, why did you bother rolling in the first place? So I like it when players try to give me as much detail as possible. I'm the guy who will say to the thief, who has gone through all this, detail and how they're searching the cupboard, I'll say, you don't even have to make a roll, man. You found the secret compartment, and it's got this in it, and so on and so forth. So, but I think it's important to structure, in this context, it's important to structure like that inverted pyramid, where it kind of, something general, kind of get the gears working for your players, and then they start talking amongst themselves, and then they start asking a few more questions, and like, okay, we'd like to look into this, and then you have this kind of sort of conversation going where they can start narrowing it down and get a little bit more specifics with the clues that they're you're hoping that they get, right. I think it was Call of Cthulhu actually talked about like it as being an onion. You start with like the horrid truth, the thing that drives everyone mad. And Dan, you were talking about this beginning, and then you just start layering the onion on top of it. So you're like working backwards. I think that's a good way of looking at it too. So it starts out with some random antiquarian asking for some rare book, and then it turns into like, well, he's being, chased after by some cultists who worships, the king in yellow and, Nyarlathotep, and now you're somewhere in Egypt about to lose your mind because, all kinds of nasty things are coming out of a portal kind of thing. So I think that's a good way to do it. And again, like if you can avoid the role, I guess. And this kind of does go into I think the second topic, but bottlenecking is a bad thing for these sorts of things.
So, Dean, same question for you. Should essential clues ever require a successful roll, or should the roll only affect how much extra detail they get?
No. If the clue has to end up in the party's hands, if they go to a certain location or do a certain thing, then it ends up in their hands. I again, if a player describes enough and puts enough effort into doing what they're doing, I don't make a roll. I was reading a kind of silly example, but someone said, "Oh, I'll search the body in this room," and the DM goes, "Okay, make a roll." You find nothing on the body, and then someone says, "Oh, I'll search the room." Oh, there are three emeralds lying on the floor. No, that's stupid. If you're looking into a room, there would be the body and the 3 emeralds. You don't have to say, "Oh, I'm searching the room to find the 3 emeralds." They're in plain sight. It's the same as someone's looking for clues. They go to a desk. There's a load of papers on the desk. I'll describe what those papers are. They'll then start going, "Oh, is there anything that is significant to what we're investigating?" And at that point, I'd be giving them handouts or something like that because it's obvious. Where I would use a roll is if there is an opportunity to shortcut some of the investigation. So it's a bonus to being able to get ahead. And it's not necessary if they fail it. The failure state is you're still behind and you're still trying to catch up. But if they succeed, if there's some clever thinking, they succeed at a roll, it may be they leap ahead or they get 2 clues instead of 1. So they're shortening their investigation time. But I would never, ever put a vital clue behind a roll.
All right, and Daniel, you did kind of answer that earlier, but to give you a chance to have the final word on this one, same question for you.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the roll. All right. But what I do think is it's just a rethinking of how we look at DCs. We think of DCs as, okay, 10 is pass and 9 is fail. Right? In this, you don't look at it. You have to look at how your system works and how you're playing it. But it's progressive. It's like, okay, if you roll less than 10, we'll use Lord. I don't even know. I've gone back and forth so many times on how we say Mattias or Mateus or whatever. I've always said Mateus.
It's one of the life's great mysteries, Dan.
Anyway, so old LM over there, he was talking about the cavern or about the cabinet, and he's looking at a secret compartment. All right. So for me, I'm like, okay, well, a DC 10, you fail. All right. Well, maybe you find 1 tablet of this important drug, this drug that's important to whatever the mystery is. Maybe you don't find the secret compartment, but you do find something that points. Your failure is you just get something that points at the right answer. All right. Your success is, okay, you find a hidden compartment. All right. And then if you have like a higher level success, let's just say, for instance, you get a 20. So instead of you've doubled the DC, so to speak. Well, not only do you find that, but you find a receipt or you find something else that's like maybe tucked back in the corner of the hidden compartment that you might have missed. To use Dean's example, all right, I'm looking at the notes on the table. Yeah, you find the notes. Well, go ahead and roll your search check. Well, in 10, okay, well, you find a receipt for some dope, a receipt for some pain medication. All right, that is probably significant. I'm going to look into this. Maybe we're going to go talk about, did this guy have a prescription or whatever. But the good search roll is, who here has ever read through, like quickly scanned through a large number of documents on a page and missed something that happened to be in one of them? How many times, who here has a game master has pulled open the rule book and you're in the middle of combat and you're trying to find this answer and you've read over it 9 times without finding it, repeatedly failing your search check to find that rule because you're in a rush? All right, now if my player
It's
says
called
I'm
stream
going-
math.
if I'm going to sit down, my player says I'm going to sit down and carefully read every one of these documents for clues. Yeah, you're going to get maximum success, like taking 10, as they say, or taking 20. But if it's like, hey, I'm going to look through them and see if there's something there, well, a failure is going to give a minimum, but they're still going to get something for the idea. A success is going to give them a little extra, and a really good success for that role is going to reward them with something that really points out what they should be. Like, for instance, like clear proof that this guy didn't have a prescription, but you know what? He had somebody who he was doing psychotherapy for, who he was struggling with, who was becoming combative and aggressive and progressively worse, who did have a prescription for that drug you found in the cabinet. And now you've got a suspect in addition to a clue.
If I can just add
Please.
quickly to that. In the first example you gave, your rolling cut short your time of finding the secret cabinet. So all the clues were leading to the secret cabinet, but the roll, if you did really well, you actually found it straight away. If you didn't, then you found a clue that there was one here. And if you did really well, then you found the cabinet and additional information. So I think that kind of falls in with what I was saying, where if you do have a roll, it often is to circumvent or speed up the investigation. I'd also come back to the papers, and you're spot on. If time was of the essence, so they were coming in, minutes mattered, I would ask for a search roll or a intelligence test, a test or something like that. Because at that point, it's not whether they pass or succeed, it's how quickly do they find the information. And if they get a certain roll, they find it within minutes. Otherwise, they're spending tens of minutes, if not hours, trying to find, shuffling these papers, just going word blind because they just cannot locate that bit of information they're looking for. So yeah, in that instance, a roll would apply, but the roll wouldn't determine whether they got the clue or not. It would determine how long it took to get that clue.
I think that's a fair interpretation, because I'm just thinking in terms of like your standard dungeon turn. It's like 10 minutes. If you're shuffling through papers for 10 minutes, you're going to find whatever. That's how I see it. However, if there is some sort of time element, and I know we're kind of going off task here, then yeah, I can see the roll being, but if they're looking, they found it.
I think it's important to kind of think in generalities here too, because all of these situations we're talking about have a dozen variables. And those variables are going to influence what your decision is on how you handle this. None of these answers are incorrect. Some of them are wildly incorrect in a certain circumstance. Other ones are wildly correct in that same circumstance.
But to be fair, we're only talking about two and a half types of clues right now: the essential ones and the bonus ones, and you can add red herrings in there as well. So I mean, you're right. This is it's meant to be completely general at this point, because I don't know if you're going to be running a D&D murder investigation, a Call of Cthulhu monster investigation, an escape room, or whatever, So we do have to be kind of general with that. So that's a very good point. But I do also have to move.
Too. Yeah, the game matters too, because people who come to play Call of Cthulhu are signing up to figure something out. So taking hours and hours to go over everything, and the role of the joy of the game, the thing that makes you feel accomplished is, we figured it out. Mm-hmm. That's different than D&D, where it's like, we figured it out. Now we know who we need to go put our fireball on. Yeah. And it really sucks if you only get 2 minutes in the session to put your fireball on somebody because you didn't figure it out to the last second.
Well, we really, really, really do have to end segment 1. Unfortunately, right now we're an hour in, and we still have 2 more segments to go. And I think Lord Mattias wants to get to his show sometime tonight. Maybe. We'll see. All right. But no, this is great because, everybody was concerned. Like, I don't know if I have a lot to say on this topic. Well, guess what? We went long and it was all good discussion. So I love it. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe to all the panelist channels. Your support keeps the conversation going and reach more tabletop RPG fans. And you know what? We may be looking for a panelist like you. In fact, I'm desperate. I'm begging. This is the only panel we've got people on this month. This whole idea of a mysteries and investigation, detective work is something that a lot of people have asked about. Now that we have it, nobody wants to sign up for the panel. So maybe literally nobody knows how to do this except for you. So we might need you on a panel. So check that out. Sign up on the Game Master Insight Discord. It's the only way to do this. Link is in the description. Read the rules, find a panel topic that interests you. Plus the June and July schedules are up as well. Now, coming up in just a moment, we're going to go into segment 2 where we'll talk about multiple paths, not just one choke point. Or is there? Before we do that, let's read super chats. And there are only 2 that I grabbed. Well, one super chat, one other chat that I popped up on the screen here. First one is from Squirrel Hermit. Yeah, that's right. Time for a little drinky poo. I can't do a Leahy impression here, but for anybody who doesn't know, what is that? Trailer Park Boys. There we go. Like just a little drinky poo. Just one more. So thank you, Squirrel Hermit, very much. I'm hitting the. I should actually save some of that whiskey. I really like it, but I'm going with the low proof whiskey for this first one.
Trailer Park Boys is great.
Yes.
Just be careful you don't
swear-
become one with the liquor.
So was SwearNet. But there we go. That was let me get the rest of this. There. That was that honey whiskey. That's actually some really good stuff. I like it. Thank you very much, Squirrel Hermit, for the $50. And RPG Grandma had a lot of good comments in there, but one that I started here was well, let's say they think NPC X is a killer. If they find X dead, then they know that was wrong. This was in terms of the red herring. Instead, let them know, okay, you now know it's the wrong. Obviously, he couldn't have done it. He's dead. So what's your next step? Was he dead? Was he not dead? I don't know. Instead of worrying about is the game master trying to mess with you, let's move on to the next thing that the red herring could lead to. So, all right, let me check something out here. Cool. Okay. Now with that. Thanks again, Squirrel Hermit. Really do appreciate you, sir. Let's move on to our next segment, which covers multiple paths, not just one choke point, and meet our second panelist, Lord Mattias. Who are you? What content do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Lord Mattias. I have a YouTube Rumble channel, and on Friday nights on both, starting at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, I host a live stream called The Second Watch with my good friend Gary. It's a lot of fun. It's laid back. We talk about game mastery. We talk about how to do things, and we also have been having a lot of fun talking with creators, game designers, and whatnot. Tonight, in fact, we're going to have Bear the Gen X GM on to talk more about sci-fi and some stuff that he's been working on. I'm also a bit of a game designer myself. You can see some of my books back there. You can find them on Lulu. And I have my first Shadow Dark and horror anthology called The Living Darkness Volume 1 on Drive-Thru. It's $9.99 for 131 pages, 4 adventures. The print copies finally, I think, have been figured out. I've had some issues, but hopefully they'll be print on demand will be available in the next week or so. But anyway, that's what I do. I've been gaming since like 1988. Started with the red box and then moved through all the editions of D&D. Played a lot of stuff in the 90s. I like them all. I think talking about these things is how you get better as a game master. And if you're interested in writing, you're going to get better at designing and writing as well. So that's me.
Real quickly, not trying to take away from you guys' time, even though I'm going to do it. One of the questions I got recently is like, why do you always ask people what their tabletop RPG experience is? Are you trying to have them resume? No. The reason is because my intent for this show is to always have diverse opinions as much as possible. I don't care if you have to have played at least, but I don't care if you're a full-time GM from the 80s or you just started playing last year. And it's not to be like, well, I'm not going to listen to him. He's only been playing for a year. And you think, no. The idea is let the people know, like, wow, that dude's kind of wise beyond his years for only playing for a year. Or that dude's been doing the same thing since the 80s. Doesn't he know that times have changed? Or, whatever it happens to be. It's to just give an idea out there that folks have been doing this for a long time or still can come up with some really good ideas, even if they haven't. I've debated taking that question out, but I think it's a fun one, so I like to ask it. Anyway, let's get to the real question.
By the way,
what's that?
I often tell a story about when I was younger. I took up a temp job and I got called in to be on a roofing crew. And there's this old guy up there, and the guy must have been, and he looked like he was 80. He was probably only 40. Smoked like 14 packs of like 99 cent a pack cigarettes a day, and probably was drunk before he even made it to his work truck in the evening. But he's up there hammering nails and, you know, hanging shingle. And this young kid who's on the roofing crew, he's maybe 19, and he says, hey, you know, I can't even remember the exact terminology. He was like, hey, if you do it this way, it's faster and easier. And the guy turned around and told him, hey, I've been doing this since before you were born. Don't tell me how to do it. And the kid responded with, just because you're doing it wrong for 50 years doesn't mean you're not doing it wrong. Now, here's where the experience comes in. I've never seen somebody come down a ladder that quickly. But he came down a ladder off that roof and proceeded to start handing out them 2 pieces. And there was a brawl. But the fact of the matter was, it's just like you said, just because you've been wrong since 1970 does not mean that there's not a better way.
All right. And that absolutely makes the point there. Lord Mattias, how do you build multiple viable leads or lines of inquiry while still preventing confusion, aimless searching, or a single failed choke point?
Well, number one, and we were just talking about this. I try not to lead, and I try to avoid using roles, because that's, to me, is how you're going to lead to a choke point. If the one clue that needed to find was behind a target number 12 on a D20 roll, I think that's a good way of just like killing your mystery right then and there. Players are going to start feeling cheated. I know I have one player in mind who's definitely the kind of guy who will ask, can I make this roll? And then when he fails and I explain, like, narrate the failure, he goes, well, that doesn't make any sense because I was doing X, Y, and Z. In which case I go, well, why didn't you just tell me that to begin with? Because then we wouldn't be rolling, right? You would have succeeded. But I think the key here is, I don't remember. Someone said like the rule of 3 or something like that. It's been floated around. I've never really thought of it that way. And I certainly don't limit it to 3. If it makes sense to have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, like things that point to a fact that the players need to have to help them solve the mystery, then I use 6, 7, 8, however many. An example would be in this thing I'm writing for the Red Room right now. It involves a professor of archaeology from Cambridge who's gone missing after having a public meltdown with some weird artifact that he found in the Congo. Well, the players are going to get hired by Cambridge or maybe one of these other factions to start investigating, like, what's going on? Why did this guy do this thing? So there's his office that they can start at. There's his home and his, private library and all that stuff there that they can start looking at. They can talk to his students who are present and can explain, like, provide some very, nothing too detailed, but some clues that there's definitely something weird afoot. He has a personal assistant / grad student that's like his top of the class that he's worked closely with. There was a reporter there that who was at the public meltdown. So there's like all these things that they're gonna that they can like talk people, NPCs and places to go where that they can like investigate, talk to these people, get a few clues, and start piecing together this complex puzzle. And then specifically, kind of going to something Dan said is the first segment, like the clues are pretty obvious. Like, well, the guy was an expert on the Congo. I wonder where he went. He went to the Congo. But they'll be able to go into like his office, and there's going to be a map of the Congo on the wall with some stuff etched near Brazzaville. And then there's going to be his diary, which is going to have a bunch of stuff in that he like neglected, which also implies that he took off kind of quickly, right? And then there's a few other things that papers, desks, stuff like that. So I think it's really, I hate to say it's going to depend on the mystery, but I don't think you should definitely have more than one. You definitely need multiple paths to get whatever these fact that they have to uncover. But I think 3 is a good rule of thumb, but I think to make it realistic and immersive, have as many that makes sense. Again, I have an archaeology professor who's gone missing, so there's a lot that they can investigate. To Dan's, murder in the locked room, there's not a lot, right? But there's the divination spells that they could cast. There's that detect magic we were talking about, right? There's just looking at the room and start maybe have the thief, the expert in locksmithing, going like, wait a minute, these doors were locked from the end. How did someone get in here? And the windows are locked, all that stuff. All of these are just different paths that lead to this 1 or 2, maybe 3 factoids that are necessary to sort of move the mystery to the next stage of whatever that is. Again, that inverted pyramid kind of thing. I think to avoid aimless searching, especially to get things sort of started, I don't think it's at all a problem to drop the very first lead in front of them and just hand it to them. I think it's kind of like dropping them right in front of the dungeon. Like, okay, guys, I'm glad you rolled up your characters. You're in front of the dungeon of the Mad Mage. You're going to go in? Sure. Okay. This would be, hey, the constable said there's this murder in this room. They have no idea what was going on or how it happened, because all the doors were locked and they have no idea how things got in there. So that's a clue right off the bat, kind of gets the players started in the direction that they need. And in my adventure that I'm writing, you had an archaeology professor who was last seen at a public lecture holding up this strange artifact, starting to spout gibberish, and he was rushed off the stage. That gets things going, right? So I think putting it right in front of them, don't just sort of keep it vague, give them something concrete to sink their teeth into right away, but nothing too specific, something general that'll start generating questions and further lines of inquiry. Multiple ways of getting to the clues you want them to find, I think, are, and as many as you feel is necessary, is key. Again, thinking about that onion that you're building, I think that's important. And I think you have to stay flexible. And Dan, and I think all 3 of us really, but Dan definitely brought this up in the last segment. Players are going to come up with ideas that you didn't think of. And you have to, and if it's a good idea, if it's plausible, roll with it. A good example, and I think it would be fine if I mention this, because last year my co-host Gary was running. We were running an actual play using Bear's heroic system, and it was took place in the 20s, so it was like pre-superhero, and we were kind of like the first heroes. And he had this big mystery. And one of the things Gary kind of struggled with is there was all these NPCs that we needed to speak with to like kind of learn not only about the mystery, but the place we were at and all this other stuff. It was kind of very convoluted, but he just sort of let us go. There was no like initial, hey, go talk to this guy kind of thing. And that slowed things down considerably. And then we didn't, when speaking with people, oftentimes that person was the only one who had the bit of information that would have led to a deeper understanding of the mystery in the place. So there was a lot that, even on reflection, because we talked about this, that there were some missteps were made with that campaign. He ended up bringing it back around, because we did have like a handler, a boss who was like, okay, hey, you're going down the wrong path kind of thing. And I think we touched upon that in the last segment too. But I think a lot of times people say less is more, but I think more is more when you're trying to ensure players find the clues they need to find. And again, that's going to be tempered by system, setting, the nature of the mystery, again, how many clues do you really need in a dungeon when you're dealing with the death trap? Probably just a handful. But like a 1920s, 30s Call of Cthulhu thing, it might be a good idea to have multiple ways of finding out, oh, this is Nyarlathotep we're dealing with, that kind of thing. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule, but that the rule of three, I think Professor Dungeon Master was mentioning it or something. I think that's a good rule of thumb. But if your setting, adventure, whatever calls for more, use more and make sure and just try to avoid rules. That's kind of where I'm at on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of reminded of Lestrade when he introduces Sherlock to a case. We have explored, we have done, we've drawn a blank, and then Sherlock steps in. He's got all these different clues he can begin to have a look at, all these different things he can now investigate to find out exactly what happened. And that's the important thing. The reason the party have been called in, the players have been called in, is because what's happened is outside the skills of those who have either initially investigated or are wanting answers. When it comes to, sorry, I've got a cat that's trying to be a little bit. There we go.
People like cats on the stream.
They do, but Lily was threatening to rip out my microphone, so I had to take care of her politely, put her on the ground. When it comes to multiple paths, I'm reminded of the red herring that leads to a bunch of guys who try and jump you, but then leads to another path to solve the mystery. And I'm wondering whether that kind of creating these multi paths, rather than it being lots of clues that eventually lead to the answer, but actually completely different paths that the party can take with a whole other set of clues that eventually lead back to. So if they do truly draw a blank on one, but they've opened up another path, there's another route for them to solving the mystery or completing the investigation. But otherwise, I think more is better generally with these, so long as when you're running the game, it doesn't go beyond your skills to be able to handle that much information. If you know that you're going to be struggling, then cut it back down to what you can manage. Your players will appreciate it far more than you trying to do something too big and ending up being lost, misplacing clues, or giving them the wrong information. A short but very engaging investigation can be just as satisfying as one that is hugely complicated and takes time to solve.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that. I don't know if I would, like, just using this thing that I'm writing as an example, I don't know if I'd have multiple paths that are like almost like their own set of clues, right? If you think of clues in boxes, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I think that is too much. But what I do think is you have a box filled with all the clues that lead to the answer, and all the different ways for each clue that can be found has multiple ways of finding it, whether it's something, like I said, like something written in a diary, a map on a wall, a strange totem that could only be found in the Congo, things like that. Like all of that will just, oh, he must be going to the Congo. Oh, what is this artifact? Oh, there's, in fact, in his private study, there's a glass case that looks like there was something in there, and it's about 3 feet long by like 2 feet wide. So it kind of gives the player some idea of like, what is this thing that he's carrying? The adventure is totally inspired by Raiders of the Lost Ark. So that'll be fun. But yeah, like things like that. And then eventually they start piecing it together. But I do agree with you. I think it's short. In fact, I prefer that. I think so this thing I'm writing is actually kind of a challenge for me. You know what I mean? Because I haven't really thought of something like that grand scale before, right? So, but let the players like feel like they're winning, right? Is once they figure out something, and they move on to the next thing, great, And then even if there's some, and I just had this thought while you were speaking, Dean, even if there is some doubt, like is the game master screwing with us, man? I mean, the map says Congo, and then they find the diary. Oh no, he's going to the Congo. Like, so now they have confirmation too. So the multiple paths to that particular factoid just provides confidence for the players as they're marching their way towards solving the mystery. So
yeah. I sometimes when I design these investigations or mysteries, I kind of layer them so that one can be solved before moving on to the next, So each one is a kind of a step, but then because I like complicated things. I make sure I understand the motives, what happened, understand how things happened and the limitations of the people involved, and then try and leave it so that when they solve one mystery, depending on how they solved it, dictates how the next one begins. And then I'll have the arcing kind of storyline, do the first one in detail, and then do the second one in detail when I know what the party have done on the first one, to give the players a lot more choice on how things move. So their agency actually matters when it comes. And typically that would be they solved the first one and they struck a huge blow against the mastermind behind all of this. Therefore, they're now in a better position on the next mystery, or they're really on the back foot. The mastermind has led them down a merry path, and now they're doing this kind of mystery because they're really trying to catch up, and they're struggling. So now the advantage is to the mastermind.
I mean, I would say that if you look at the as far as our prompt here goes, with interweaving multiple avenues, that sort of thing, it's 3, 5, and complete, and none of them are wrong. You can think of 3 as the pyramid method. As always, we start from the beginning. We start from the truth. We start working backwards. First, I say, how many layers do I want? Once again, you tailor this to the adventure. You tailor this to the system. You tailor this to the players. I'm going to go back 3 levels. Okay, level 1, I have 3 things that get to the answer. All right, each of those 3 things have 3. So now I have 9 things that get to the 3 things that get to the answer. Then I do another 3 for each one of them. So I have 27 things that can get to the 3 things that can get.
Yeah, that's beyond fingers and toes. I'm out.
Basically, it's every answer has 3 pieces of information that can lead you into the next level. That is the stupid, easy, back of the envelope way to do it. The 5 is, let's just do this like old school journalism. Okay, here's the bad guy. Here's what happened. Who, what, when, where, how. Who would know about it? What would they know about it? What would point towards it? How did it interact with? That builds our next level. Gives you a clear picture of what's going on. And then you do that. Who would do that? And you build it up to the next level. In case you haven't figured this out, in most games, you're probably not going to go more than 1 or 2 levels deep unless you've got some players who really, really love a mystery campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Because once you start getting to, I have 29 and 30 different avenues to get into the next level, we're not talking one shot. And so that's your 5. I'm going to ask who, what, when, where, how. This guy died in this room. Who, what, when, where, how. How did it happen? Who did it? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay, this is who did it and how he did it. Who would know about that? How would they know about that? What information would they have? Et cetera, et cetera. I build on that. And then there's the complete, which is where you literally sit down and you pull up the entire circumstance and you say, I know all this information and here's everybody who would know these pieces, and you build that out. It all comes down to how much you as a game master want to put into it versus, balanced against your players. Because it's very easy for you as a game master to say, I'm going to do who, what, when, where, how, when you really only need I need 3 clues for your players, because your players are not going to get that deep into it. Or vice versa. I'm going to do, I have the 3 things that get into this. And next thing you know, you're like, holy crap, I have 3, my players are sitting here watching CSI and they're watching all the FBI documentaries and they're reading Sherlock Holmes.
So they're all housewives.
And now I have no answers for anything because I only did the 3 clue method. And I'm like, I only got 3 clues and they're asking me about all this stuff that makes sense. So you have to ask yourself first, what kind of players do I have and how much are they going to dig into this? And I would say that the best for most people is going to be in the middle. If you're trying to do something quick and easy, go ahead. 3 clues per level. 3 main clues per level that they get without rolls, and you can build off of that. But if you're going to build a serious mystery, you should be asking yourself who, what, when, where, how for this level. Go to the next level, who, what, when, where, how. And if I had 3 who's or 3 what's or whatever on the last level, I'm going to build those out. And you don't have to be super detailed about it. You just have to know. Because if the player does something and you as a GM are sitting there going, all right, that would reasonably point to the baker, and I know for a fact that the baker would know this to get to level 2, I can point them towards the baker. There's my clue. I didn't have to write a clue. I didn't have to create a clue. I just know for a fact that the baker would have this information. A player thought it's a good idea to go talk to him. Bam, I've got him. I just need to make sure that those pieces of information exist in the world and don't just completely get left out. And there you go. Multiple threads, probably infinite threads when you really think about it, without you actually writing them all out.
Right. Well, that's why it's important to stay flexible, because I think, yeah, your players are going to, come up with something that you weren't expecting. And that's why, like, regardless of what you've written out, don't tie yourself to what you've been working on. But that's, I would submit to whatever you have been working on is important, because from just a kinesthetic learning sort of perspective, you've written it out. It's now embedded in your brain. So when the players do go off script, you're ready. You don't have to sit there shuffling through paperwork going, wait a minute, guys, hold on a second. Like, you're ready to go. So yeah, I agree. Quick fun fact though about CSI. In the legal biz, we've been having problems for years with juries because they want CSI level.
Yep, they want
detail
CSI
at court. Yeah, and
they don't understand the difference between reasonable doubt and no doubt.
Exactly.
Well, also I mean, this is overdone, but it's a perfect example. People seem to think that because they saw on a TV show like CSI or whatever, that you can take a picture, a picture that's, let's say 160 pixels by 160 pixels, and mysteriously zoom in on that thing and get 4,000 pixels out of it and see everything clearly. That's not the way photography works, folks.
Nope.
But so question, Lord Mattias, follow up here is, when should different clues point to the same conclusion, and when should each clue reveal something unique? And this is a conceptual question. You don't have to like dive too deeply into it, but as a concept, when should clues point to the same conclusion, and when should clues reveal something new and unique?
That actually is one of those questions I haven't really thought of, but while writing this, but I think I've been doing it, because I pulled up my manuscript that I'm working on. And so like the initial, so I'm just going to use an example here.
Sure.
So the initial investigation, they hear about this wacky professor who had a public meltdown, right? And if you go to the students, they're not going to have a whole lot, because they're just students. They're just showing up to this lecture. They could tell you he was speaking gibberish. It was scary. And they can tell you that, his personality changed when he came back from the Congo, right? Not a whole lot. You talk to the reporter who was there. She's going to provide some information. She's going to be able to confirm that the artifact, the coruscating eye, is about 4 feet in diameter. And the man is 60 years old, and it was made out of solid stone, and he was able to pick it up and hold it over his head. And then she's going to say, I have here, she rebuffs any attempt to characterize Professor Haggard as mentally ill. She calls him a con man. She said he was using some kind of parlor tricks as part of his performance. If pressed, she will reveal she saw blinking lights coming from the artifact. She believes he was using some kind of parlor trick to pull off an illusion. So their main clue is, what is this coruscating eye, right? And she kind of confirms it. She confirms what's going to be going on, but then she reveals something else, something mysterious. And that's kind of like the clicking noise my murderer was making, right? That's going to lead to something down the road. It's kind of spooky. It's kind of setting the tone. So when should you? I don't know. When it seems appropriate.
No, that's fair. But can you explain? Remember, think of it like this. Somebody who's never run a mystery before is going to watch this video and say, oh, hopefully these guys can give me something here. You don't have to dive into like all the ones and zeros. It's like you guys have been saying the entire episode. A lot of this is very nuanced again, but conceptually, when should clues point to the same conclusion? And when should clues point to, say, revealing something unique or a wider set of information?
Well, I guess the object in the game world, an object can be a person, place, or thing. lends itself to providing more information by virtue of what it is. Again, example, the college students are just stupid college students. Well, I mean, it's the 1930s, Cambridge, so they're not stupid, but not like today's kids. But they're not like intimately connected with the professor. So all they can say is, yeah, it was weird, it was scary. He was speaking gibberish and he was holding this big stone thing. But then you have the reporter, by virtue of who she is. She's going to know a little bit more. She's going to be a little more savvy. So she can provide a little bit more. And that little bit more is kind of foreshadowing some stuff that's going to come down the road later, especially when it starts connecting with the other stuff the players are discovering if they go to, and they should hopefully, but when they go to the private study at his home, the professor's home, right? They're going to find some more stuff, and they're going to like this coruscating eye. It's some cult from 100,000 years ago in the Congo. That's weird, and start to like plant some, hopefully some spooky seeds in their brains as they're heading to the Congo. So I would say that I gave it as general as I can.
Sure.
The object of let's see if I can repeat it. The object of in your campaign world that is providing the clue, depending on what it is, it may be able to provide more information by virtue of what it is. That was kind of clumsy. Sorry.
That's fine. Well, I mean, again, these follow-ups, you guys don't prepare for the follow-ups like you do the regular ones, so I get it. So, Dean or Dan, any you guys want to jump in on that at all? I can ask the question again if you want me to, but
spit it out. Spit out the question again.
So when should different clues point to the same conclusion, and when should each clue reveal something unique?
When the logical progression of the world calls for it. Okay, if something happens and it can logically point to the next big clue, just to use a term here, the next big thing, it should. All right, let it point. And I hate to use this terminology because there's connotations with it within the community, but if you think about the path from mystery to solution as a railroad, if it points back to the railroad, let it point to the railroad. Let it point to the tracks. All right. If it doesn't, let it point to something that does. That's really the question. If somebody comes up with something, you're not thinking about, if there's something that's happening and it's like, when should it point this? When should it not? Well, it shouldn't point directly to the tracks if it doesn't make sense to point directly to the tracks. However, you should think, how can this point to something that is near the tracks and gets me back into that position? So even when the players are wrong, and now this is one place where you actually have to step away from verisimilitude. All right. You got to step away from the world working as a real world. If it legitimately would just point them into a direction that leads to them never solving anything, you should probably do a little bit of creative GMing to point it back in that direction. Because, as I said in the first segment, and you just have to repeat ad nauseum in this kind of discussion, there are clues. There are things that you as a human being in a real situation would have that are impossible to impart onto your players. And that is because there is no way that you can give them enough information to simulate them being in the real world. And you have to make up for that. So you always need to point it back. But what you don't need to do is always put them right back on the railroad. That is railroading. That is the bad railroading. That is the bad thing, is when you're like, no. We're always going to point you directly towards the answer. I just need to, if you're 45 degrees, maybe you're 90 degrees and you're running parallel. And you're getting a little closer, but you need to shift a little more. That's really the answer to that question in a big, grandiose analogy, is that if it makes sense that it points back towards the tracks, if it's even close, make a little adjustment, point it back towards the tracks, Reward your players for actually putting in the effort to think about things and put pieces together. If they're close to right, let them be right. If they're not, guide them back into the direction of being correct and give their characters the benefit of the doubt that they would know more than the players because they do exist in the world.
Yeah, I think, Dan, you make a really good point bringing up the so-called railroad. I wouldn't actually call this a railroad, but some people in the industry would, because anything that points in a direction, or dare you use the phrase story arc, would call it a railroad. But when you think about it from terms of adventure structure, the mystery really is like a quote unquote adventure path. There's a beginning, middle, and end. Like, it starts with the mystery, starting collecting clues, they figure it out, and then there's this like resolution, whether they're confronting the big bad, they find the missing kid, they find the missing item, whatever it is, right? So I think that's important to remember, that you're not playing a sandbox. You're playing like this sort of adventure path that XDM, Hickman Revolution, so when the players start deviating, maybe nudge them a little bit, and we've been kind of talking about that by being flexible. If the players have an idea that you didn't think of, but it's plausible to lead to a clue in advance, let them do it, So, I agree. And I think it's good that you brought that up, because we're not talking about a sandbox here.
No. If I could just
Hickman Revolution for life.
if I could just add, because I first of all, I agree with my two panelists here. I just wanted to try and put it in a way that if someone's listening and they're thinking, well, when do clues lead to different things, and when do clues all lead back to the same thing? The only advice would be probably the initial set of clues that you have for the party to find. They can lead to many different things, and sometimes it's good for them to lead to other areas, but then the clues they find on the next step should be the ones that point them all the way back to the initial. So the first set of clues can be quite broad, they can lead to different things. The second set of clues or third set of clues now all point back to the solving the mystery, and that would be my advice. The further into the investigation you go, those clues should be the ones that now all point back to what has happened and uncovering the mastermind or completing the adventure. If you start having clues there that start going in different directions, you're just now confusing your players, and their sense of accomplishment will be diminished, because they'll think they've missed something, or they'll start to go down dead ends and end up spending hours getting frustrated.
All right, then. All right, folks, don't forget to share the stream. Tap that hype button if you have access to it, and get this discussion trending. I actually saw somebody in the broader Dungeon Tuber, what a weird term, circle, that we know that was on the hype, and he has less subscribers than me. So that means we can do that. Mash that hype button. We can get this video out there hyped for folks, and put in front of more eyeballs. And of course, you or someone may make an amazing panelist. Sign up on the GMI Discord. We could really use some panelists coming up in May. Like, this might be the only show. I hope that's not true, because there's a lot more mystery for us to uncover during the month of Mystery May. There we go. So sign up on the GMI Discord. Link is in the description. Read the rules and find a panel topic that interests you. In segment 3, our panelists will talk about dead ends, misreads, and productive failure. Now, to some degree, like always, this is intentional. They've actually talked about some of this stuff, but we're going to wrap it up in a nice, neat bow for everybody out there and have this first part. Did we cover everything about mysteries today? No, that's not the intent. That's why this is supposed to be the entire month, because there's different facets that you can do. But I think they've done a great job of explaining how clues are used. And we've got one more facet with regard to that, and that's going to be talking about the dead ends, misreads, and what happens when you fail that keeps things moving forward. But let's finish the segment with your super chats and some member comments. Well, super chat I already did that one, but you know what? I'll thank you again because I clicked it. Thank you, Squirrel Hermit. Really appreciate that. I'm not drinking a second time for you, though. Unless you donate more. No. Somebody else donate, not Squirrel Hermit. He's giving us a lot of money. Nobody else has.
That's okay.
RPG.
I'll drink for you.
What's that? You'll drink for me?
Okay. I'll drink for you.
All right. Thank you very much. There we go. It's the alcohol stream. For members, and I stress members, if you're watching this after the stream's over and the video's out there just for you to watch, you're going to see all the comments that RPG Grandma has been putting in there. A lot of great commentary that she's been putting in there about mysteries and so forth. Heck, she should have been on the show today. I'd have walked out and let her host the damn thing because she's had a lot of good comments. Unfortunately, it's only going to be for members because only members get to see the full stream in its entirety after the fact. Because we do have a members only portion that we'll have to get to, but all that will be saved, and you can see that in the chat log or whatever it's called, so to speak. But she says here, the detective murder mystery games you can buy, like Cold Case or Murder On, in a type of games. I don't know what that means right there, but look at how they present evidence, including red herrings. Basically, if you get a bunch of mystery games, I have a ton. They put me to sleep. I'm serious. Like I look at them like 30-minute mysteries, whodunits, and some other stuff. Like even kind of choose your own adventure stuff. Dang it, Squirrel Hermit, it's not for you. We'll get to that in a second. But I try, man. I've never been into that whole Harlequin or whatever. Like I just never have. It's never been my thing. So I struggle with that. But a lot of good suggestions there, and I'm sure these guys might have some, and you might know some as well that are good suggestions for getting those brain juices flowing. But thank you, RPG Grandma. But here's a question for the panelists, and we're in Lord Mattias' segment, so he gets to take a stab at it first. Before this is over, I'd be curious if the panelists have a published module that they can point to, regardless of the system, that they can say, this is how you do a mystery. All right, Lord Mattias, what module do you know of that's a good mystery out there?
I am working on a published module right now for the Red Room. It's called Temple of the Coruscating Eye. For the Wretched Interbellum. It's an unofficial sequel to something I published for them like a couple years ago called Isle of the Sapphire God. I'm really leaning into like pulp adventure. So Isle of the Sapphire God is really more of a hex crawl on a strange island, and there's stuff that you can kind of encounter. I wouldn't call that a mystery, but the sequel, so that takes place in the mid-20s. This takes place in the mid-30s. There's 4 factions interested in Professor Haggard. It's an American industrialist, the professor's friends at Cambridge, an Italian art dealer, and her mysterious benefactor. And of course, no good Indiana Jones type adventure would be complete without the bad guys from World War II. So and it's going to start with like an investigation and then a race across Europe and Africa to the Congo, and then lead to this temple where they find the good doctor and the artifact. So this one is starting off as like a mystery. Where's it going? What's going on? Are these things that we found going to be helpful once we get to the Congo? Who are some of these other factions and other players involved? I don't know when it will be ready. I'm like in the middle of writing it right now. So
I think Factions is next week too, or is that the one that's the week after? I forget. Anyway, Factions are something we're going to be talking about in we might be talking about in Mystery May. But all right, so you have one that you're writing.
If this is, I'm hoping this is how you do it.
I'm sorry. I think you kind of cut out there for a second. What was that?
Oh, I just said I concluded with I hope this is how you do a mystery.
Daniel or Dean, any modules that you can point to for any game system out there that this is how you do a mystery?
I guess a couple. It's kind of a hard thing. First off, I would like to say, Squirrel Hermit, I stream on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of every month, and you are 100,000% welcome in my chat.
Squirrel Hermit is awesome.
I drink a lot. Anyway, it's kind of hard to say you point at a couple. I like Blackwater Creek, which is in the Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. Oh, what is it called? I think it's the Keeper's bonus pack or something. It comes with the Keeper's screen and everything like that.
It is that. Yep.
That one, it has 2. It has Missing Dues and it has Blackwater Creek, both of which are excellent mystery adventures. Those are both very, very good. And I would also say that the old Atlas games, it's not a mystery adventure. All right. Don't even get that. It is a locked room scenario. It is not a mystery adventure. But the old Atlas games, Cyberpunk 2020 module, oh my God, you just made me forget the name of it. I can tell you everything about it. And as a matter of fact, it's even worse because I'm actually running it right now.
Oh, wow. That's, you know what you can do though, is
Cabin
when the
Fever.
video goes live, you can actually put it in the comments.
Yeah, Cabin Fever. That's what it is.
Oh, Cabin Fever. Okay.
Cabin Fever is awesome. It is a locked room scenario. It is not a mystery scenario. However, if you are looking at leading your players into playing a mystery type scenario and you want to kind of start taking baby steps towards how do I figure these out, Cabin Fever forces the players into this bar with this toxic cloud, right? They get a mission. It's a fake mission. The boat that they're supposed to board and steal stuff from blows up and blows hydrofluoric acid all over the place. They're forced to run back into this bar while this cloud of hydrofluoric acid is everywhere. And like I said, it's not a mystery. It's a locked room scenario. However, for them to really get through this scenario, it's about talking to people. It's about finding out what's going on. It's about getting pieces of information and putting them together in a way that makes the players have ideas of how to correctly handle the scenario to get a better resolution, or to prevent this one drunk cyborg guy from going cyber psycho and blowing holes through all the windows and stuff and letting the gas in. It flexes. It's kind of like if you're like, all right, well, I want bigger biceps, so I'm going to go do like chin ups, which is a back exercise, but it also hits the biceps. Same thing. You go to the gym, you have all these other exercises that hit the muscle group you want from different angles. It does that. It works the same muscles as what a mystery scenario should be. Same thing.
I would actually argue that escape room style adventures are mysteries, is just a type of mystery.
You can think about it that way. And this one's not necessarily an escape room because the escape comes whether you're looking for it or not. It's just about, does the escape come in a way that leads to you locked in a room with interrogators telling them you're going to give them sexual favors to not kill you? Or does it lead you locked in a room where they're offering you money to join the team because you're clearly an asset? And all of that's going to be based on what information you garner throughout the adventure and how you use it. So it flexes those same muscles. And then, like I said, Blackwater Creek and Missing Dues, which are both part of the Keeper Screen pack for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, are both exceptional mystery adventures that teach you how to go around and find clues and figure out where you're going. I think those are both great ways. If you just read them, and you can make mystery adventures. All
right. And Dean, do you have any examples?
It's a difficult one. I don't run a lot of modules, and I've been racking my brains. There is one that is notable. I can barely remember the details. It was such a long time ago, and I never got to complete it. Kind of playing on the cyberpunk side, but it's the Shadowrun side of things. So if action is more your thing, the Harlequin set of adventures.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
Really, really good.
Talk about a long time ago. You're not kidding.
Yeah, I am. Because it's the setup, it's the mystery that slowly unfolds as you begin to piece things together. Who's employing you? Who's getting you to do these jobs? How are the jobs interrelated with each other? And by midway through, you're beginning to sense something far bigger is happening around you, and then by the end, the big payout as you begin to figure out exactly what's happened and how you may or may not have been played as fools. It's. I think most Call of Cthulhu modules, I've only played one, which I think it was called The Mouth of Madness. Can't quote me on that, but it was again another great one. I went into it thinking, yeah, my character's not going to survive, and I was not disappointed. And when it comes to just pure investigation, where combat is the last resort, Call of Cthulhu is fantastic. I think most of the modules there gives you a good grounding in how to put this stuff together, how to think outside the box and coordinate things. But I think Lord Mateus is writing one as well. I think so. So hopefully that would be good.
All right. Well, there we go.
I just want to throw out though. I think speaking of Call of Cthulhu, I think it's the Lore Master's Guide. It's got a lot of advice in there. I think that's worth looking at too. So it's not a module, but so. All
right. Well, we have 40 minutes left, and we still have 2 segments to go. So I'm going to just want to remind folks that we'll have hopefully a segment 4 here. Segment 4 is when you can come up. So if you have a question for the panelists, think of it now. And when I put the link out there after segment 3, we might only have time for 1 or 2 folks, but let's see if we can get somebody in here to talk to our panelists, ask them a question. I know, DLSD had another question on there, but I don't have time for it right now. So maybe he'll want to ask that question by popping in. Who knows? Anyway, but we do have to move on here. So let's read the super chats. Squirrel Hermit. Oh, that's right. We were reading super chat. So he did another $50, and then he followed this up. He's like, challenge accepted for another 50. Well, thank you very much. And he's like, no. It's like I was referring you not drinking twice for me. Well, that's not the way this works. You paid. I respect the money, not you, sir. So I have to drink. Of course, I respect Squirrel Hermit. And this time I'm going with the heavy proof one. The heavy proof. I can't talk. The 100 proof double barrel whiskey. So here we go.
Which one is that?
I don't know. Heaven's Doors, it's called. My wife got it at the
that's the Bob Dylan whiskey. That one's actually really, really good because unlike a lot of the other celebrity whiskeys, Bob Dylan actually has a hand in selecting the barrels.
It says Bob Dylan right there. You're right. So,
yeah, that is Heaven's Door is really, really good if you're a bourbon guy.
So I've had this one once before. I've actually only done the honey and then the Heaven's Door. I still have 2 bottles I haven't opened yet, which are a little lower proof. And they're from the same. Oh, yeah, they're all Heaven's Door, but apparently they're just lower proof. All right, well, here we go. This is the 100 proof version. Again, thank you very much, Squirrel Hermit. You know I appreciate you. You're awesome, sir. And I hope other people can follow your amazing example. There we go. Alcohol for the tummy. Okay, moving on here.
Watch you shoot that.
What's that?
I said it hurts me to watch you shoot that instead of slowly enjoy it like you should.
Well, but I gotta do the stream, man. I can't sit here and waft it and gotta go down.
If he comes and pays me $50 on my stream, I'll go shoot Mr. Booker's.
Let me knock this one out real quickly here, and then we'll get in the next segment. One more super chat just popped in here. Paladin Steve 81 says, nothing really to say, just wanted to give some money for some reason. Well, you know what? There's no better cause than this. Because think about this. This is for the folks who don't know, and I know we got to get in the next segment. I'll make this quick. Legion of Myth might not continue on into 2027 if we don't hit our funding goal, which I hopefully will have updated by Sunday to know where we are. Maybe it takes YouTube a couple of days. So every little bit counts. Every little bit helps. And I'm dead serious about that. If we don't make our funding goals, I have other things I need to do in life that will be higher priority than sitting here spending time doing a couple of streams per week that take me all week to prepare for. So every little bit helps. And thank you very much, Paladin Steve. You're awesome. We need more awesome people like you. All right. So with that taken care of, let's meet our third panelist and have our final question here where we talk about dead ends, misreads, and productive failure. So, Dean, you've been here once or twice, I think. Who are you? What content do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
I'm Dean from Evereye Games. We're big supporters of indie creators, so we do a couple of things. One is we do indie spotlights. We've had 2. It's been a very old school week this week. We've had 2 indie spotlights go out. One discussing stuff with Chris, who's a zoologist. He's made a module called the Dire Forest, and it's for BX, one edition, first edition. Sounds fantastic. And the second one was talking to Bill Sylvie, Dungeon Delver, and Yang about Empire of the Undying Sun and the 1E conversion they're doing there. project that we have backed because it's just eking with old school charm and better than 5th edition, in my opinion. In addition to this, we also are writing a game called Untold Destiny. It's about to go into we're doing editing and layouts, and then we're releasing a free part of an adventure with first level rules for people to get their hands on and have a play before looking at Kickstarter later on in the year for the basic edition. My gaming experience, well, it's been everything from, I'll start with the one that gets you excited, from Earthdawn to Shadowrun to basic D&D. Started back in about 87, properly playing with a group. I was doing solo books long before then. So it's been pretty much sci-fi to fantasy to storytelling to pretty much everything. I just love games. I love mechanics, and I love talking about them as well.
Okay, perfect. We want people who talk about more games. So, when have wrong conclusions, dead ends, or missed clues improved an yeah, you see, I twisted it on people there. Improved an investigation, and when have they damaged momentum, trust, or player investment? And I'll be honest with you, the one I'm most curious about, though I'm not going to tell you to answer the question, is the trust one. Because I think that is, people mentioned it already, is that trust, game master trust is imperative when it comes to investigation. Anyway, you got the question, however you want to answer it, answer it, but that's what I'd like.
Okay. I'll tackle the trust one first, which is if your players feel you've treated them unfairly. So in the case of a mystery, you've been laying a trail and your players have been taking everything at face value. And then you suddenly change the rules on them. A clue that was leading somewhere turns up to be false, but with no logical reason why or how or why they wouldn't have noticed it. That's when you start to lose when your players start to lose faith in your ability to be the referee of the game and to be the conduit between what they do and the world and how the world reacts to them. And the moment that kind of trust breaks down, especially in an investigative mystery setting where you have to be very specific on your details, your players can start to question what's happening and potentially lose interest. But I think we've already touched on a lot of the kind of where dead ends can prove to be a benefit. So from my kind of the bad guy, the mastermind, leaving a trail, you follow the trail, you get jobbed, ambushed, but then that opens up another avenue back to finding the mastermind. So it will all come down to how you design the mystery, the investigation. And as we've already said, I think the core of this is, before you start, have a good understanding what's happened, what are the motives of everybody involved, how did they do it, and how are they looking to counter the people who are going to investigate. If you've got a good understanding of that, you're very armed to be able to deal with pretty much anything the players throw at you. You've got your prepared clues. You have potential dead ends that could lead back or provide other avenues to investigate. But more importantly, you can respond to your players who do something you do not expect. Because when they do that, when they start to ask questions around areas where you didn't quite think they're investigating something, and you're there going, oh, actually, that's really good. What would have happened? You've got all the information within your mind, within your head, within your notes to go, yeah, hang on, this would have happened. I can now reward my players for doing something unexpected, for advancing the story in a way I didn't expect, and making them feel what they do around that table matters. When it comes to things, because I think misreads was another one. What do you mean by misreads? Is that just where the player completely misreads a clue and jumps to a different conclusion, or is it something else? Yeah,
basically. So whenever wrong conclusions set in or missed clues, improved investigation. So missed clues in this case, you could also say misread a clue. Same thing is they either just didn't find it, but they still move forward anyway, or it made the investigation more fun. Or in the case of misreading a clue, it created, like we were talking in segment 1, a red herring you weren't prepared for, but it was still something that was interesting for everybody. Real quickly, while you think about that for a second, I got a Discord message from somebody. That's why I was looking away for just a moment. Somebody was apparently blocked. I'm not going to mention the name, but somebody was apparently blocked. It is true. You were blocked. I unblocked you, but usually there's a reason why somebody's blocked. So just please don't get yourself blocked again, but you are unblocked now. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Because I don't do a lot of investigative stories, and I have bits that are dropped into campaigns as and when it's kind of applicable. I'm finding it difficult to actually answer the misread ones because I'm struggling to come up with examples, and short of what we've already discussed, where a red herring could potentially open up avenues of coming back in, or having, I guess, if I was tackling this and I had a group of players and I knew the group of players typically forgot rules, or not forgot rules, forget clues, or aren't used to the style of game, I would have, and it might be considered bad, but I think for the players, it would benefit the table. I would have sets of clues that I could potentially drop in. So even if they're bumbling around, because I know these players, they don't like mystery games, but they've accepted that this is part of the campaign. It's a small part of the campaign, or that they're just not experienced enough. I would then have these clues so that when they start to go into the long grass, I can kind of begin to bring them back, drop a clue in, make it make sense, to try and bring them back in, so that the missteps can actually be fun, and I'll try and do it in a very humorous way, so they get to have a laugh, they get to enjoy the game, they get back on track and feel like they're actually moving forward.
By the way, whether I agree with you or disagree with you on that, that's exactly kind of the point of that question. It really was. The idea of the question was, for again, a new game master, somebody who's looking for the idea on how to run a mystery, how it doesn't have to shut down the game. Basically, you don't have to force feed everything to the players in order to get it right. Mistakes can happen. It doesn't shut down the game or the session. At the same time, there's horror stories out there where it does. That's why the question's two-sided, obviously, as well. So that's exactly the type of answer that is useful for this question. So thank you. With that, Daniel or Lord Mattias, if you guys have thoughts, go ahead and jump on in.
It's a matter of intent in a way. If the players are trying to follow clues, are trying to follow things up, and they are simply wrong, you should ask yourself, what is a logical thing here that should point them back? Now, in most cases, that's going to be they're not hitting the bullseye, but they're somewhere on the target board. And depending on how close to that bullseye they are, that's how good the clue that points back in the right direction should be. And if they're totally off base, just like with the red herrings, just like with the other things we've talked about before, it should be crystal clear you hit a dead end. Crystal clear. No ambiguity whatsoever. Now, if you have players who are screwing around and are sending you clear signals that they're not buying into this, first, you might want to ask yourself, if it's the entire table, for instance, you might want to ask yourself, is this table really buying into a mystery game? If they're not, maybe let them let the town go off and have a serial killer or whatever, because they don't care. But if you have one player who just happens to be the guy who dominates the table and pushes people to do stuff, and everybody else is kind of like, oh man, well, maybe think about this thing. And he's like, no, let's just go to the bar. That is when you have to step in and you have to start pushing. You hate to do it as a GM, but that's where you have to step in and start curtailing that player who's driving everybody off the tracks, who's intentionally misreading stuff, to give the other players an opportunity to give their answers. So you do things like you say, hold on a second, Dean. OLM over here had something to say. What'd you have to say, man? What are you thinking? Okay,
Let's go to the bar.
Max, I think you had
Yeah,
something too.
let's go to
You
the
tell
bar.
me, Max, what do you got going on? So I'm shutting Dean down so he doesn't lead us off into Monty Python land, and I'm letting Max and old Lord Mattias over here tell us what they're thinking to get the game back on track. And if everybody's just going to keep going off in the Dean direction, then guess what? I'm turning the game into a farce. I am understanding that as a game master, I have misread my group. They're not going to play this scenario. They're going to destroy it in every way they can, and I'm going to make it as ridiculous as possible. And I'm going to abandon my mystery because I, as a game master, misread my players. But I'm going to give Lord Mattias and Max the chance to play the system by shutting Dean down in that regard. But like I said, otherwise, if everybody's really buying in and they just kind of bought on this idea that doesn't make any sense, I'm going to ask myself two questions. First, I'm going to say, can this make sense? Can this lead in a circuitous fashion back towards the answer? And if it can, I'm going to let it go that way, and I'm going to give them the guidance to go, take the path through Albuquerque to get back where we're going. If not, then I'm going to have to step in and make something more forceful, which is generally just saying, hey, this is a dead end. Here are the Jesus, can't talk. The crystal clear.
And I'm the drinking one.
No, I mean, I've been drinking martinis pretty much all afternoon. It's anniversary of my mother's passing, so I drink gin martinis in her honor, and I'm like 6 deep. So anyway, crystal clear. This is the end of this path. It leads nowhere. I may not grab them by the throat or the shirt and pull them over and say that, but I'm going to make sure that they understand that the route they're going doesn't lead anywhere to get them back on track.
I think there's something, Dan, you kind of like brought up, but went in another direction with it. And we really haven't talked about this, I think, is when as great at game masters as we like to think of ourselves, right? What if we made the mistake, right?
Yeah.
When is it that like this awesome mystery, like you just didn't think of something, and it's one of those not think of something where the players aren't thinking about it either, and it's just like everything's just gone to crap. And I think at that point, and Dan, you have been alluding to this and saying is, drop something, make it work, behind the scenes. I don't think though, if the players are just not into it, or if there's one player that's not into it or something, and they do something that kind of circumvents the progress of the mystery, I don't think necessarily you have to I don't think you necessarily have to give up. I mean, it's going to depend on the type of table, right? If it's a beer and pretzels game, yeah, man, maybe you have some fun with it and be goofy. But if you got people who are like really into the role playing and you just have Ragnar, the barbarian biker guy, drinking, who just wants to go to the bar all the time, that's when I start enforcing consequences. And if the players do abandon the mystery because, you're playing a more sandbox type game and they decide to, go to the next town over and start exploring stuff over there, okay, well, guess what? The serial killer is going to keep killing. And then maybe somebody else is going to step up to stop it. And maybe there's going to be some negative consequences to the players for not,
somebody they know and like.
Yeah. They told I actually did that recently. I mean, this is not really a mystery thing, but in my Gods of the Forbidden North game, they've been flirting with this criminal syndicate. They've been thwarting its attempts to do what it does. And it's been, there's been like a war brewing, and but they keep ignoring certain things. So I finally had the syndicate kill a constable that they've been allied with very publicly, like a horrifying mutilation. And now the Baron has enforced martial law, confiscated the players' stuff, land holdings, because he's tired of this turf war, so now that's forcing the players to figure something out, like, oops, maybe we shouldn't have been ignoring this, So I think consequences are a very powerful game master tool, regardless of the type of game you're running. But going back to GM mistake, All right. One of them, again, I'm not trying to pick on my co-host here, but his campaign, The Row, was a lot of fun. Like, we were playing pulp era, like magic wielding, like superheroes, you know, pre Batman and all that, right? Pre Golden Age. And we were kind of struggling, trying to figure out who to talk to, this, that, and the other thing. And he got it in his head that the game was becoming boring. So he decided to inject a villain kind of quick, sooner rather than later. So this fire starter guy starts going through the tenement houses of The Row and just starts setting them on fire. We stop what we're doing to go stop him, which completely derailed what little progress we had made. And we were kind of starting to go down this other path because of it. Well, here's how Gary rebounded and made that all work. You know, the mistake, of course, was interfering with our deliberations with this supposedly fun combat that we were having, and it was fun. But well, that was the first time our characters came out as superheroes. So now all of a sudden the city of New Harbor was like, hey, let's talk to Dr. Alchemy and the rest of them, you know. Let's get to know these guys. And this is how we rebounded. We got to start talking to the big wigs of the town, the mayor, the deputy mayor, the commissioner, and all this stuff. And we also got introduced, I can't remember his name, but he was a real estate mogul who was buying up the tenement houses and wanted them demolished because of this magical artifact that was buried beneath. And he had hired the fire starter to do that. And we learned that at this big soiree, you know, hobnobbing with all the ritzy people. And we learned about that and got those clues and put two and two together. Now all of a sudden we knew who the big bad was. So that's how he was able to rebound. We were floundering with all these other things. He inadvertently screwed us up by having this action-packed scene, but then through the rebounding, we were not only back on track, but we actually made progress. So that, I think that goes to something that both Dan and Dean have been talking about this entire time too. So I think it's important to have a little bit of humility too, right? So if maybe it's not your players are stupid, maybe you just did something. Maybe you messed up something. Maybe you didn't put the proper clue. Maybe you didn't state something clearly. You know,
you thought it was a great idea, but the rest of the world doesn't know what your great idea really is.
Correct.
So I have to unfortunately put on the moderator hat for a moment and say, as much as I'm sure that we want to talk more in the segment, I do have to allow for some time for segment 4, even if we sit around and do nothing. So what we'll do is we'll continue this through into segment 4 until people pop in, but I do have to move there. With that said, because Lord Mattias was talking for a bit there, if you can make it quick, Daniel or Dean, do you have any final comments you want to say on this? I have 2 more questions I'm going to ask you, but it's going to be in the members only section that piggyback on that.
Yeah, I'll just like to add that when I design a mystery, or in fact, when I pretty much design anything that has a failure state, the party can fail. I always plan what happens after that. It's never the end of the game. It's never the end of the investigation. Things move on.
Awesome.
I was just going to say that, and this is one of the distinctions I made before Lord Mattias responded to me. If it's one player who's not buying in, that is when I try to cut him off to the side. If absolutely necessary, be like, hey, dude, play along. I get it. Mystery ain't your thing. You just want to go swing your sword. Everybody else is enjoying this. There's going to be times where all we're doing is swinging swords, and the role play guy is like, man, all we're doing is swinging swords, and he's going to let you swing your sword. Let him have his mystery. Let him have his discussion. And so I'm going to cut that off, and I'm going to put that to the side. It's different when it's like the entire party is busting things apart and they're all going along with that. Or even if I do segregate him and they keep drifting that direction, that's when I have to look and say, all right, as a GM, I've made a mistake. These players do not want this. And that's when I have to make that adjustment myself. If it's the one player and everybody else is buying in, everybody else wants to do this, and he keeps doing what he's doing, and he keeps dragging the players into that, that's when consequences come in. Because I want to teach those people who are letting him drag them that they need to stand up for themselves and play the game they want to play and be their characters. not just let him go along to get along and drag them into stupid ass decisions. That's going to teach them that they need to speak up for themselves. It's also going to teach him that there's consequences for him continuing to drag them off into Monty Python land when we're trying to play Sherlock Holmes. And that's when you, like, I 100% agree. That's when you put those consequences. Like, okay, you want to ignore this serial killer? Y'all want to be jackasses about this? Congratulations, one of you just got framed. Now you're being chased. And now you have to clear your name. And guess what? You need to solve the mystery to clear your name. Here's a lesson for you.
All right. Well, with that, I do have to put an end to segment 3 here because we already have one person waiting in for segment 4. So we'll have at least one person to talk to, which will be awesome. So we will have more in the members only. I'm not exactly sure how long Lord Matties can stay for that, but we'll do our normal hour here for members only. But now we have 2 people in, so let's get to segment 4 here real quickly. But before I can do that, I have to end segment 3. So become a Legion Myth member by hitting that join button. You can also support us after the live stream with super thanks. Really helps us know that you truly like the content and want more of it. Do you think you have more panel presence, better opinions, better experience, or something else to improve upon a panel like this? Well, sign up in the Game Master Insight Discord. The link is in the description. Read the rules and find a panel topic that interests you. Now, in segment 4, we bring you in to talk to our panelists. We already have 2 in the background. That's probably all we're going to have time for. So I think we're full up already as it is. So I've already posted the link out there. I will try to get to folks, but, again, I have a hard cutoff at 8:30 my time. So let's do the swap-a-roo here, and then so I got to do that first, and then got to find the layout, which I think is that one. Nope. That one. Nope. It is that one. Okay. And then there we go. Flop everything around there. And just so the folks know, here are the rules. So before we bring anyone in to talk to the panel, I need to remind you of a few things. You don't want to get booted, possibly even banned. Do not break YouTube's terms of service. Stay on topic. Unless someone specifically super chats more time for you, you have 5 minutes maximum for your back and forth. And no matter what, the show has a hard stop at 2 hours and 30 minutes. So that's like basically 12 minutes from now. So it means we may not get to everyone. We have 2 in. We should have no problems getting to them. And yeah, I guess that's it. And remember, this is for the panelists, not for me. Please don't come in here and talk how much you love or hate the show or whatever. It's the panelist time. So you're asking questions to them. So our first one, he paid his way on today. Squirrel Hermit, good to see you, sir. I love you, man.
You're all a bunch of losers.
Yes, we are.
Hey,
but
I say that with love. I just
course.
have an idea, and it popped into my head when Lord Matthias was talking about leaving the dice rolls like minimal when you're looking for clues, traps, secret compartments, and etc. I've done this several times, and it worked out well at the table. Leaving the discovery to the clues in a stack of documents, or the secret compartment, etc. Yes, I do agree. I lean on the side of leaving it up to the player's description of what their character is doing, how they're looking, whatever. I get the time constraint. Sometimes you got to roll and let's go. The building's burning. Let's go. But however, you allow the player, they roll the die. Okay. But I have a little wooden cup, little wooden cup with a lid on it. They put their die in the cup, they shake it up and leave the lid on. And while they're describing what they're doing, how they're reading or searching, you don't remove that lid until after the description. If during their description they hit on where the hidden button is or whatever, cool, they got it. You shake that cup up and you hand it back to them. So they don't even know what roll they got. If they don't hit those keywords, key phrase, whatever in that description, then you remove the lid, you both look at the die, and if they failed the actual skill roll, well, then you failed. Because we all have a tendency to metagame. I do like open die rolls, but I that's more for combat, because combat's open. Like I see the guy with the sword swinging at me.
Right.
And that's all I got to say.
What do you guys
Not
say?
really a question. It's just food for
No,
thought.
that's cool.
I think that's
ahead,
I
Dan.
think that's a fine way to do it. I actually add some interesting suspense and almost in a weird sort of way creates another level of game going on, right? Like now the player has a choice, and I actually kind of run it somewhat like this or analogous. So now the player has a choice, like they're going through the description, and then but all the while they have this unknown thing that they could rely on, like phoning a friend on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something, right? Give me the double 50-50 or whatever, right? What I typically do, and this is just my typical dungeon, when I'm running dungeons and stuff, if the player is role playing and they're really into it and they're describing, how they're investigating and how they're searching for stuff, and it's detailed and they're into it, and they're, and it's really immersive, yeah, they're not going to have role. But at the same time, I have players who'll just go, I walk into the room and I search. Okay, make your roll. You've decided that you want it to be left to a die roll. Fair enough. So I kind of do that, just without the added step of hiding it and letting them kind of figure out what they want to do. So
As somebody
I
who
don't
loves dice rolls and dice pools, I actually like his idea. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I really like that idea because I know me as a player to be sitting there. What the hell did I get?
I know it creates tension. It creates tension.
I love it.
So
Yeah.
now they're like, do I trust what myself?
And the thing is as well, you could use that even with the degrees of success.
Yeah, I
So
was
you
already
reveal the die roll, and it's like, yeah, you got what you got. Or okay, there was a nat 20. By the way, you were about to, oh, I got this and that, and you know what? Something just drew you back to the third page.
I didn't kick him. I promise you.
The funny thing is I was already going in that direction that he was thinking, and I was kind of trying to think of ways to incorporate it. I actually do something somewhat similar with initiative, and I've toyed with this, and I need to make it standard. Is I used to have players roll initiative the second they start the session, and I just record it, because then when combat happens, I already have their initiative. We just jump right into it.
That would drive me crazy.
The whole time they're playing, they're like, shit, my initiative was a 4. My initiative was a 4. When's the bad guys going to come? Crap, the bad guys are coming. I got a 4. All right. So, and it made them think more tactically because they're like, they're thinking the whole time, I'm turning their metagaming against them. I do like that idea. And I'd almost say like a way I would modify that is to kind of combine the two and say, all right, we're going to play a mystery game. It's like, I want everybody to roll a D20 and put it in the cup.
Well, hey, we've got one more to pop on in here. So I'll let you finish up your thought. I just want to let you know we have one.
Yeah,
one
so
more.
It's like we've all got our D20 in the cup. Now, while we're going through things, just like he said, it's degrees of success. I know you've got a 12. Okay. And as you're speaking, if you go past 12 with your narrative description, you're going to get extra. Okay. You're going to get whatever you tell me you're getting with your good ideas. However, if you only describe an 8, you're going to get your 12. So I've got basically I have a minimum that's in a cup, but you don't know what the minimum is. Yep. So when you go searching, you say, well, I'm going to look through the drawers or I'm going to look through the papers. I have a minimum of information you're going to get. If you give me more description, I'm going to reward that. If you're lazy, you're just going to get what you rolled and you don't get to know what you rolled.
Fair enough. All right, let's bring in, I don't know how you want me to call you, but it says here DLS D25. So
yeah, so I'm Michael.
Yeah, Michael,
I think everybody else on the panel knows me either
Mike?
from X or YouTube or Rumble. Yeah, how you guys doing?
So
I actually had a question for you guys, and it came up because somebody mentioned railroading, that basically if you're running a mystery, do you have to railroad it? And I guess my question, which I asked in the chat but was shut down so he could sucker me on, is can you run a great mystery adventure or campaign with only a really great set of clues fleshed out? If you're a great GM, you're good at winging things, you have your world, you have your campaign. If you put together just a really good set of clues and wherever you want them to leave, can you successfully run a game like that just dropping them in willy-nilly. It doesn't have to be a particular NPC, or the place where you're going to find the secret thing in the desk isn't fleshed out at all. Like, can you do it without really, or could you release a product like that that's just the clues and the mystery without locations, without, you know what I mean?
I don't know if you can release a product like that, but though I'm open to being wrong on that. I will say that with like complicated traps and obstacles, I generally don't know how to solve them. I just kind of write them, and then I listen to what the players are doing, and if it sounds plausible, or if a die roll is needed, I'll call for a die roll, or I'll say, yeah, this works,
Right.
So I'm going to say, while I've never thought of running a mystery like that, I think you could, and in fact, even for those game masters and tables who like their story arc type adventure modules or campaigns, you're kind of doing that already, aren't you? Right? The game master has their big bad, the big bad's doing stuff, and the players are interacting with the world, and then the game master's sitting there going, well, yeah, this based on what they just did, they would learn this. So they are kind of dropping clues. So yeah, I guess you could. I don't know. Again, like from a specific product perspective, I think the idea from a consumer's perspective would be I'm buying a mystery from you, and you're going to tell me how to run this, which would require the NPCs with the information, the locations with the information, the smoking gun, that sort of thing. So as a business perspective, I don't know if it's a good idea.
I wonder, because you get tables, you get random locations, you get whatever. If you could do a completely system agnostic, location agnostic, but an amazing mystery, and actually put something like that out, and somebody be able to use it,
I think you could. I actually think you could.
Question though, let's refine this question, because Lord Mattias brought this up by bringing up, could you make it a product? I mean, modules by definition are at least somewhat contained.
Right.
I don't think it's so much, can you run this, in a sandbox, or, can you put this in there, dropping it in, so much as it, can we do this zero prep, or can we do this random table? Right. Not just sandbox. Like, I've created a sandbox you're playing in, but can I do this where I'm rolling what happens in every hex? Can I do this in a quote unquote zero prep, which we all know I think is a fallacy, but can we do this in a zero prep situation? I think the answer is yes, but you are signing yourself up for something that is completely antithetical to what you're running.
Right.
Because to have the mystery be efficient and to be effective and to be solvable, you have to have a high degree of prep. If we're going to randomize what's happening, now we have to go back and re-prep every time the random information is introduced.
Right.
The question is, as we're players are going through this, do my players bite on it? Do they bite on it on the first introduction? Do they bite on it 10 times, 10 hexes into the adventure? Do they bite on it 50 sessions later? Each time they make a decision that generates one of those random results, I have to go back and completely correct at least the initial introduction of my mystery to get them into it. And if they bite on it, now I have to have it planned out so that they can actually run it.
Hey, real quickly, we got less than 2 minutes left, guys, and I have an outro to do as well. So,
okay, I just want to say I'm going to change my answer based on what he just said. I think it could work, but consequences would play a huge role, because if you're relying on random tables to provide the clues or whatever, some clues are going to be better than others. Some clues are going to be duplicative. So how the players end up solving the mystery is going to be highly dependent upon what they end up rolling, which might actually be kind of cool. My brain is already starting to, what if
and
you have an
I don't know if the
adventure-
random
Well, what if
element
you
is
had an
necessarily a good
based
one,
off
but
of movie 7, right? And so they find the first one, and they're like, "Oh my god, what is this?" And then they don't get enough, and they're not sure. Well, then another murder happens, and then another, and then another. So the degrees of success would be how fast they could get to figure out who the who, you know what I mean? And if it's, but then again, though, how fair would that be if it's all related to like die rolls? I don't know. That's an interesting question.
All right,
Well,
Dean.
more
I'm gonna let you wrap this up
easier.
because I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah.
8:30. I got to
Yeah,
shut
no,
down
yeah.
here. So
Yeah.
Dean, I'm gonna let you have a chance.
I think it can be done, which is you got your random tables and you start with what is the mystery, and that then tells you what clues are applicable on all the other tables, and then you have your triggers for those tables being rolled. So you start up with this mystery. The clues are dropped in when certain things happen. So, for example, you randomize mystery A, and the first clue you randomize on the table will only occur after a battle has happened. So the first battle the party's in, this clue is dropped as part of that battle, leading to the end resolution. You randomize all your other clues, and they might have triggers of when they can be dropped in. So you're running your adventure as normal, you're running your campaign as normal, but when these certain triggers happen, you know, great, I can now drop this clue in, drop that clue in, drop that clue in. And at the point the party kind of put the pieces together, they can leap to the prepared, and this is the part that has to be prepared, what the mystery or the investigation is about, and they can now attempt to solve it.
100% agree.
And that's probably the way to do it.
that's interesting.
All right. Well, we have to leave it there, Michael. Thank you very
Good
much.
question,
Actually,
man.
I
No,
love
hey,
reading.
yeah.
I love reading your
Appreciate your
comments
question,
even
Michael.
before you came up in here. Sorry, it's
Yeah,
just it's a
thank you.
time thing. So
Yeah, no,
thanks
no
for
problem.
popping up, and I
No
hope you do it again.
problem. Yeah.
You have a great day. All right, there we go. Well, that is it for the public portion of tonight's Game Master Insight. Please leave a comment of who you believe had those compelling, interesting, or novel position, even if it was one of the call-ins. Did you learn anything new that you may try at your table? Let us know in the comments. YouTube members, there is more to come, so don't go anywhere. Sincere thank you to everyone who supported the show with Super Chats, Rumble Rants, and memberships, and to all of you who took the time to join us tonight. Finally, thank you very much to tonight's panelists for their time, the informative and spirited discussions. I know Lord Mattias at some point here has to leave and even go do his own show. So be sure to subscribe to their channels or check out their content through the links in the description. And with that, I look forward to doing this again next time.